Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
Sound Cartel.
It's been a couple of hellish years for a huge number of businesses. But economically, what does 2022 have in store? And would a possible change of government make a difference to the bottom line? From Sound Cartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. COVID continues to linger. Petrol and other commodity prices are increasing. There are supply delays and staff shortages are wreaking havoc across many industries. In an effort to provide some practical support and direction for businesses, we're bringing together experts across the medical, psychological, business and economic disciplines. On the 8th of March 2022, Business Essentials Daily and Barrington Centre will present a one-off live online panel discussion called COVID Merry-Go-Round, Searching for the Business Wins. Panellists will include Dr. Catherine Kelleher, Principal Medical Advisor for the Federal Government's Department of Health, John DiNatale, acclaimed business coach, mentor and author, and Rhonda Andrews, leading corporate psychologist and Managing Director of Barrington Centre, with Neville Norman giving the introductory address about the state of the economy and the implications for business. And in the lead-up to this event, each of the panellists will be interviewed on the Business Essentials Daily podcast, providing sector-based insights and solutions. In this interview, Neville Norman has two main messages for businesses right now. Don't be fooled by the figures and plan ahead for any more economic earthquakes that might come along. He starts by explaining to Jeff Waters why it is he doesn't want to dwell on the current economic figures.
I'd rather not tell you, Jeff. It's not a great scene, and I'm at the moment completing the scope survey of Australian economists' inputs, so you can read about that. I'd rather not give you the numbers because I think that worrying about the numbers and worrying about COVID and worrying about the election and so on is not a good thing for business. But the general message is that we've still got subdued economic activity. It's growing, but not by much. We've got a few things that are looking better, and some of them for entirely the wrong reasons, which I'll come to. But the overall economic message is that you've got to wait a little longer before there's a rush of demand back. And there is a risk of rising interest rates, which listeners have been hearing from me for over a year. I don't like saying it, but there it is. But I am going to give you some numbers. They're not real numbers, they're phantom numbers to make a point. And it's about unemployment rates. For a long time, I've been aware that immigration is a major benefit with a few teething problems for the Australian economy, and that unemployment rates are a bad indicator of where the economy is going because they're lagging. I'm going to put them together in this parable. It's very important that you replay this and write it down. Imagine there's 100 people in the workforce and 95 of them have a job. That means that 5 don't. That's called unemployment, and that's 5%. Pretty simple. Pre-COVID, the workforce would grow by 2%, mostly from migration and a bit from natural increase. And that would take it to 102. There'd be maybe another 2 employed, taking 95 to 97, which is 2%. 3% growth, 1% productivity, pretty simple, and the unemployment rate stays at 5 or 5%. Did that for decades. Now, COVID. Migration butchered, indeed goes negative. More people leaving than coming. So the workforce at best stays with 100, with retirees balancing new inflows. The growth in employment from 95 only up to 96, 1% growth, with about 1% growth in the economy. So actually unemployment falls. See that? 100 minus 96 is 4 or 4%, and the politicians say, hey, vote for us. Look at this. This is brilliant. Run it on another year and you've got a 3 in front of it. Moral. We can't, as an economy, have immigration going low or negative without severe economic benefits or politicians abusing the electorate, treating them like idiots and thinking that a decline in unemployment rate is actually a good news and reflecting things that are sustainable. That's a warning for one of the many watch-outs, and that's what I wanted to say about the economic numbers.
Now, in the National Scope Survey of Australian economist forecasts, most until recently thought no interest rate rises would happen until 2023 at the earliest. You were described as a maverick, saying, no, they'll happen this year. Let's face the music. What do you say now?
Well, Jeff, I say the same as I said for a long time. I don't like predicting interest rate increases, and for borrowers, it's hurtful. But it's an unreal world. It's been promulgated by what I think has been one of the most irresponsible statements, the alleged promise from the Reserve Bank that rates wouldn't go up till 2024. They're running for cover, trying to unscramble that, and there's a flood of economists coming back to the position that I've put on these programs for over a year, that we just can't sustain it. As a result of it, we've had inflation. I'm not talking about bread and meat. Interest rate increases won't do anything about that. But share market and particularly housing booms have been fueled by this irresponsibility. I think that's going to change, and as a result, you must get ready for it. But there's a tip. Don't just think that it's great to swing now into fixed rates to stop the rises, because watch the contracts, and I'll come back to that in a moment because it's a sort of tip.
Neville, you consult with businesses and don't just do economic forecasts. What would you say to a concerned small business in Australia today?
Well, indeed, Jeff, this is why I like to be helpful here. If you think of any of the 20 or 30 top companies in Australia, I think I've worked with pretty well all of them and know the inside. And there's a lot they do that I think most of you genuine small businesses probably don't do but could do without much expense. I mean, you're not going to invite the Prime Minister to open your factory or office, and you're not going to be visiting all 4 continents in which you've got your operations. But there are some things that you can do that they do. And one of them is to actually strategic plan. What does that mean? It means you write down or type your view of the future, with revenues, expenses and balance sheet items. You do it by conferring with family, friends, associates and advisors, and just bring one in, an accountant if that's the least. You do scenarios of the most likely, a better and a worse one in your sense. You share it with your bank or credit provider, and you allow for what a change of government or other strategic changes like COVID will do, and put a plan in for what you do over the 4 Ps: your product range, your prices, your promotion, and your partnerships. Now, there's a few other things that you can do that are specific to small business, and they are: check what assistance is available to small business. As we surge into 2022, the federal government's washed its hands of small business and bumped it to the states. There are a lot of initiatives coming out, but you'll need specific data to attest to, for example, revenue losses, and consider, finally, what a rise in interest rates will mean for you. Now, play that list again, and my question for you is, how many of those things are you really doing?
Let's finish with some of your watch-outs, Neville, as we charge into 2022 and an election.
Okay. Watch out for rising interest rates, any further developments in COVID, but here's the controversial bit, not the election. The election, in my opinion, is something that might move your philosophy, but it's not going to move your business. 3 years ago, I said, get ready for a likely change in election. It's not certain. Now, it didn't happen, and the reason it didn't happen is the reason that this time I don't think it's going to make any difference. The reason it didn't happen, the main one, was that the then opposition, same opposition today, embarked on a politically foolish strategy of ill-explained tax changes that cut votes away from them. Half a brain would indicate that they won't do that again. So I think that even if there is a change of government, the policy background for a business is going to be no different. However, if it's thought that the government will be returned and then they were dumped, you will get dramatic short-term changes on exchange rates and not interest rates, but share market prices, and it will just be a bump and then you'll go on. Now, that's very controversial. More controversial is that, Jeff, not as an economist, but as a shopper, I do know the price of bread and petrol and meat. I know that meat's gone up 15 to 20%. I know that bread has pretty well stabilised, and I know that petrol prices, there are four main types, but ULP ranges between around about 155 to 190 in the Melbourne and Sydney suburban areas. And that sets me apart from the Prime Minister, who on his own admission doesn't know that. So can I be Prime Minister?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to reject that because I had the chance to go into politics long ago, and I'd rather be here advising small businesses on what I learnt from big businesses, go back over that list, and that's where I think I'm more responsibly done, and to make sure that when you hear about unemployment rates with a 3 in front of it, you say, that's absolute garbage, and then I'll have achieved my goal.
That was Neville Norman, Professor of Economics at Melbourne University. Please don't forget to join Neville and the stellar group of panellists at 7:30am on Tuesday, 8th of March, for the live webinar. It's a free event and we'd love to see you there. You'll find all the details in the show notes of this episode. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at Sound Cartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast.
Sound Cartel.
This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.